There are 5 positions on a Sherman. First, the commander, who was in charge of the crew and would give orders of what he wanted them to do and where he wanted them to go. Second was the gunner, who was second in command and would sit in front of the commander. He would be the one to use the small turret and the periscope to look outside the tank. Third was the loader, who would load the gun and would also be trained in fixing any issues with the main gun or machine gun. Whether it be any duds or technical issues, he was the one that would fix them. Fourth is the driver, who obviously would drive the tank, and could also use a periscope or a direct viewport to look outside. The viewport was later removed because it was a huge weak point on the tank. Fifth is the co-driver, who would mainly stay on his .30 caliber machine gun. However, he could take the place of a downed teammate in battle if necessary. During the war, as the U.S. advanced, they would loot German housing, taking food, oil, as well as any ammo that they find, and other useful supplies, which they could just strap to the outside of the tank or put somewhere on the inside. There were lots of instances, however, where the U.S. soldiers possibly killed German civilians on purpose while looting, as well as other war crimes. However, it was more than likely covered up.
There were roughly around 50,000 Sherman tanks built from 1942 to 1945. Companies that helped build the Sherman tank were Pressed Steel Company. Railroad cars and equipment was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The company was helping manufacturing the Sherman tank with other companies such as Baldwin Locomotive Works, American Locomotive Company, Pullman, a standard car company, and Detroit Tank Arsenal helped build the Sherman tanks. The Sherman tank was named after a famous American Civil War general named General William Sherman. The M4 General Sherman was the most widely used series tank used by the Western Allies. It was not just employed by the U.S. Army and the Marine Corps. It was also employed by British, Canadian, and also the Free French forces. There were a total of 49,324 Sherman tanks produced in 11 plants between 1945 and 1946. The M4 Sherman tank was roughly in the same class as German PZ-4. In the Normandy invasion, June 6, 1944, the M4 Sherman was outclassed by better tanks such as the PZ-5, also known as the Panther, and the PZ-6, also known as the Tiger. With all these losses of the heavy M4 Sherman tanks, after the Battle of the Bulge, a general named Eisenhower asked that no more than 74mm Sherman tanks be sent to Europe.
Originally, the armor on the Shermans was 2 inches thick with a 56-degree slope. The later Shermans had an armor upgrade with 2.5-inch thick armor and a 47-degree slope. The new design improved ballistic protection and got rid of hatchways, making bigger hatches for the driver and gunner. The Sherman was made with a few different calibers, the 75mm, the 76mm, or the 105mm. The Army restricting the height and width of the Sherman so it could fit on roads and be transported without special accommodations inadvertently helped the Sherman with mobility. The later diesel engines had a significant superiority over the earlier gas engines that had a tendency to explode. There were some interesting variants later on. The M4A2 with a bow-mounted E4-5 flamethrower.
Filmed from a reconnaissance plane during the invasion of Iwo Jima in February 1945, this terrifying footage shows a flamethrower tank in action clearing an area suspected of concealing Japanese defenders.
There was also Shermans modified with rocket artillery such as the T-40 Whizbang, which was mounted on top of the 75mm M4 variant of the Sherman.
Some people might give some hate for this, but I will maintain that the M4 Sherman was probably the greatest tank of World War II. And before you get angry at me, let me explain what I mean. No, the Sherman did not have the greatest armor. No, the Sherman did not have the greatest gun. No, the Sherman was not the most technologically advanced. So why was it so great? Got some bigger enemy tanks to deal with, so now you need a heavier gun and armor on a tank? There's a Sherman for that. Are there mines and other improvised weapons that are in the way that you need to clear? There's a Sherman for that. Going into an urban setting and now there's a lot of rubble to clear in order to make a path for your infantry. Well, there's a Sherman for that. Oh crap, are we out of AA guns? Well, guess what? There's a Sherman for that. You could take the chassis of the Sherman and you could do quite literally anything with it. It was the most cost-effective and customizable tank.